Long ago, in the land of Israel, two great armies faced each other across a silent valley. One stood tall with power. The other trembled in fear. But what happened next wasn't just about warriors or weapons. It was about something far greater: faith. Long ago, in a land called Israel, two great armies stood on opposite hills, facing each other in silence. Between them lay a wide open valley, a place called the Valley of Elah. On one side stood the army of Israel, led by King Saul. These were strong, brave men, but on this day their hearts were full of fear. Why? Because across the valley, the mighty Philistine army stood ready, and with them came a champion. Not just any warrior, but a giant. His name was Goliath. He was enormous, over 9 feet tall. He wore a helmet of bronze, a coat of heavy armor, and carried a spear so big it looked like a tree trunk. Every morning he would march into the valley and shout, "Send someone to fight me. If he wins, we'll be your servants. But if I win, you serve us." But no one in Israel stepped forward. Not one. For 40 days, Goliath mocked God and challenged the army. And for 40 days, the Israelites trembled. But far from the battlefield, in the peaceful hills of Bethlehem, a young shepherd named David was watching over his father's sheep. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't tall or strong, but David had something the others had forgotten: faith. Deep, fearless faith in God. One day, David's father, Jesse, called him over. "Take this food to your brothers at the battlefield," he said. David packed up the supplies and headed out. He didn't know it yet, but this trip would change everything. When David arrived at the camp, he heard a voice echoing through the valley. It was Goliath, again, shouting, mocking, daring someone to fight him. David looked around. Soldiers were hiding, afraid, shaking in their armor. David was confused. "Why is no one doing anything?" he asked. "Who is this man who dares to defy the armies of the living God?" The other soldiers laughed. "You're just a boy," they said. "Go back to your sheep." But David wasn't joking. He couldn't believe that no one trusted God enough to stand up to this giant. If no one else would go, then maybe he could. Word spread quickly, and soon David was standing before King Saul himself. "You want to fight Goliath?" Saul asked, surprised. "But you're just a boy." David replied with confidence, "When I was watching over my father's sheep, lions and bears came to attack, and every time God gave me the strength to defeat them. He will help me now too." King Saul looked at David. This boy didn't have armor. He didn't have size or strength, but he had something even greater: faith. Saul took a deep breath and nodded. "Go," he said, "and may the Lord be with you." Saul offered David his armor, but it was far too big. David could barely walk in it, so he took it off. Instead, David walked down to a nearby stream, picked up 5 smooth stones, and tucked them into his pouch. With his shepherd's staff and sling in hand, David stepped into the valley. Goliath saw David coming toward him. He laughed. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" he shouted. "Come here and I'll feed you to the birds." But David didn't flinch. He looked Goliath in the eye and said something powerful. "You come at me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. Today he will hand you over to me, and everyone here will know there is a God in Israel." Then David ran forward. He reached into his pouch, pulled out one smooth stone, placed it in his sling, and began to swing it around. Whiz! The stone flew through the air, straight and true, and struck Goliath right in the center of his forehead. The giant stopped, staggered, and then he fell, face down to the ground. Silence. Then shouts. The Philistines turned and ran in fear, and Israel's army, now full of courage, chased after them in victory. With just one stone and complete faith, David had defeated a giant. David didn't win because he was the strongest or the tallest or the bravest. He won because he trusted God. While everyone else saw a giant too big to fight, David saw a God too mighty to lose. You see, we all face giants in life. Not big warriors like Goliath, but problems that seem too big, fears that seem too strong, or challenges that feel impossible. But like David, we don't have to be afraid. When we put our faith in God, He gives us strength, He gives us courage, and He fights our battles with us. David's victory wasn't about a sling or a stone. It was about a heart full of faith. So the next time you face something scary or overwhelming, remember David. Remember that with God on your side, no giant is too big. Thanks for joining us on this journey. If this story inspired you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little courage today. And always remember, when you trust in God, you're never alone. See you next time, and keep believing.